Hi, I'm Jack Koenig with Graco, and these are the G3 Max Gen 2 automatic lubrication pumps. In this video, I'm covering alarm code A14, low pressure. Pressure is the input labeled P on the side of the G3 Max, and it is designed to monitor a single-line parallel metering system, otherwise known as an injector system. Injectors can take several forms, but the ones connected to a G3 usually look something like these GL30 and 40 series peanut injectors, these GL1 injectors, or these GCI cartridge injectors. Injector systems are powered by the pressure developed in the mainline between the injectors and the pump. To make sure each injector fires, a certain pressure must be reached in the mainline. The necessary pressure can vary from one system to the next, but for a grease system, it will often be somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 psi, or about 140 to 240 bar. For an oil system, the pressure will normally be under 1,000 psi or 70 bar. The P pressure input is connected to a pressure sensor, either a switch or a transducer, which allows the pump to know when to stop pumping. There are multiple possible causes of a low pressure alarm, and this video will attempt to cover the most common ones as briefly as possible. If this lubrication system is outdoors or some other place that experiences temperature changes, the first thing to ask yourself is, could a colder temperature be making the grease or oil more difficult to pump? If the answer is yes, you might simply need to reprogram the pump by setting a longer timeout time. Instructions for programming the pump are available in the video titled Lubrication Ends on Pressure Input. If the program allows it, try doubling the timeout setting. After the G3 is reprogrammed and you have exited the menu, press the right arrow button to initiate a manual run. If the pressure setting is reached before the end of the timeout setting, then you have fixed the problem. Look for any leaks of grease or oil from the mainline hose or tubing that interconnects the banks of injectors with the pumps. If you see any leaks, repair them. At the pump outlet, it's helpful to have a pressure gauge installed. If pressure is building on the gauge, but your pressure sensor is not detecting it, you might have a blockage in the mainline. One way to check for this is to open a plug or other fitting near the end of the line furthest from the pump. If the pump is building pressure but no oil or grease is pumped out the open port, then you may need to replace part of the main line. You could also try disconnecting the line from the pump outlet and using a different pump to backflush the line, which might clear the blockage. The O-rings and other packings inside of an injector will wear out over time. Once they are sufficiently worn, grease or oil will pass through the injector instead of actuating the mechanism inside of it. Once this happens, the injector needs to be replaced. On a GL1 injector, you can test for this by removing this hexagonal cap from the grease nipple installed on the injector. For other injectors, you may need to remove the outlet fitting. If grease flows continuously while the system is pressurized, then it's time to replace the injector. We do offer repair kits for our injectors, but most people prefer to discard them instead of spending the time to repair them. If temperature changes are not the culprit and there are no breaks or blockages in the system, the next step in troubleshooting this alarm is to trace the cable from the P input to the pressure sensor. Make sure it is connected at both ends and that the cable has not been cut or damaged. Sometimes the sensor is mounted next to the pump, but often it is mounted some distance away. If this is a new installation, double-check your wiring diagrams and verify that the cable has been wired to the connectors correctly. Some sensors have 3 wires that need to be connected, and the pin assignments on these sensors can vary from one to the next. Dry contact switches typically only need 2 wires, and these wires need to be connected to pins 3 and 4 on the G3's M12 connector. You're going to want to have good lighting or you won't be able to make out these little numbers. At the pump outlet, it's helpful to have a pressure gauge installed. This aluminum block is a manifold which includes a vent valve and a pressure relief valve. It also has a port at the front end for a gauge. Some vent valves also incorporate a pressure sensor, but this one doesn't. If your system has a pressure gauge mounted at the pump outlet, verify that pressure builds when the pump is running. To initiate a manual run on the G3 Max pump, first clear the alarm. Press and hold the left arrow for a few seconds, then press the right arrow momentarily. On a grease pump, you can see the wiper arm turning whenever the motor is running. The same motor that turns the wiper arm also strokes the pump element. An oil system doesn't have a wiper arm, so it can be more difficult to confirm the movement, but if you look inside the reservoir, there is a round nut at the bottom with 2 flat sides. You might be able to see this nut moving as long as your oil is not too dark. If pressure is not building while the pump is running, check the vent valve power cable. Be sure it is connected at both ends and that it is not damaged. If the cable looks good, then get a piece of iron or steel such as a wrench and see if the vent valve solenoid attracts the metal while the pump is running. The coil of the solenoid is an electromagnet, so if it's not attracting the metal when it's energized, something is damaged in the solenoid and it needs to be replaced. Contact your local Graco distributor for help in identifying the correct part number. If the vent valve appears to be functional but pressure isn't building, then it may be time to replace the pump element. The pump element is a piston and cylinder assembly which threads out of the base. You need a 1 1/8 inch wrench to remove it. The part number for a G3 pump element is 571041. Replacement pump elements are available from your local Graco distributor. Before I go, let's look at some different models of pressure sensors. Pressure sensors can be broken into two main groups, switches and transducers. A pressure switch simply opens and closes the circuit connected to the P input. It closes when the pressure is at or above its setting, and it opens when the pressure is lower than its setting. The G3 Max uses this open or closed state to determine the status of the injector system. Here are a few forms of pressure switches that Graco sells for the G3 Max. This switch with orange dials is Graco part number 24K414. This is not a dry contact switch, but rather a PNP transistor, and it needs 3 wires to connect it. It uses an M12 connector that has the same pin assignment as the G3P input, so it's plug and play with almost any M12 extension cable. It also includes LEDs to show its status. Green means it has power, and amber means the switch is closed. 557829 is popular with some older Trabant distributors because it has been around a long time and they are familiar with it. When it's new, it has 3 wires, but only 2 wires are needed when used with a G3. So the black wire should be clipped off and the red and white wires connect to pins 3 and 4 on the M12 connector. Polarity doesn't matter. 24N181 is a Barksdale 9000 series switch often used on mobile equipment. It uses a DIN connector for its wiring. It's also a dry contact switch, so only 2 wires need to be used to connect it. Again, the polarity doesn't matter, so as long as pin 1 common is connected to either 3 or 4 on the M12 and pin 3 normally open is connected to the other one, the switch should work. If you choose to use our M12 cable part number 124300, then the blue and black wires are the ones that connect to pins 1 and 3 on the switch's DIN connector. The white wire and the brown wire are not used, so they can be clipped off of the 124300. Pressure transducers are analog sensors. Instead of simply opening or closing at a mechanical setting, transducers report the actual pressure of the system to the pump. They do this by varying the voltage level within the circuit connected to the P input. To be able to do so, the connection requires at least 3 wires. The G3 Max uses this varying voltage level to determine the status of the injector system. To do so correctly, it requires that more information be entered in the programming during setup. Transducers are generally smaller than switches because they have no place for mechanical adjustments to their settings. If your pump is displaying inaccurate pressure levels, then you need to verify that the G3 Max is programmed for the correct settings for your transducer. I hope this video has been informative and helpful. Please contact us with any questions, and thank you for choosing Graco.